Any questions or comments from last week? Everybody's okay? Or we forgot?
It's okay
We are
for
going,
me, sir.
okay. We're going to start from module 3, and we'll try to cover module 3 and 4 today, and 5 and 6 tomorrow. And there are a couple sections that is very US oriented, so we should be okay, be able to cover the entire 4 more chapters that we have. Today, we're mainly looking at, to start with, the searching and showing and selection process. I know that since, a lot of them have to do with ML, so it might be a little bit different, but let's try to apply it to your market as well. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing you need, the objective for this module is identify wants to manage a buyer's expectation. Managing buyer's expectation is very, very important part of the buyer agent process. And show properties in a manner that presents the clients with the best opportunity to view properties. And I'll show you some safety tips and how you want to do that as well when we do showings. And follow federal, state, and local fair housing laws. I know that there's not a fair housing law like in Cambodia yet, but maybe it is good to learn from what the fair housing law is in the United States as we move forward, especially when we're trying to set a global standard so that there be a transparency on the purchase and buying houses throughout the world. And especially when you might have an investor coming from Europe or even from the United States, you know what they are expecting you as well as an agent. All right. So managing expectation in the United States is said to be three most stressful thing is, number one is death of your family member is most stressful. Number two is divorce is most stressful. And number three is relocation, moving. They say those are the top 3 items that puts a lot of stress on you. And of course, money always comes into play, but actuality on that money, might have to do with everything that's listed there as well. So, and we are dealing with people are very stressed when they're buying a home. But our goal, there's just no way that we're going to take away all the stress the buyer has. But our goal is to reduce their stress level as much as we can by offering our professional help. An important part is listen, ask questions. Their needs and wants can change. We'll talk about that a little bit as we move forward. And provide or remind them of the overview of transaction. You need to provide them overview and remind them how the real estate transactions are performed. And this is something that you know for your market and your country. And even sometimes, even within a country, it might be different the how process is. In the United States, definitely within the 50 states, it's a little bit different because our laws are different. How we close transactions different, but even within my own state, the way we do things are different. So you gotta understand your local custom or local way of procedures that you do for real estate transaction. Provide them with ways to take notes on what you show them. You wanna make sure the buyer is really understanding what you're showing, so you don't have to keep going back as well. And in the United States right now, it's very fast-paced market. So what does that mean is sometimes a buyer have to make a decision by just visiting the house only one time, because our medium price houses in Washington State, especially in Seattle area where I am, usually goes under contract in 3 to 4 days. So you might only have a chance to see the house once and to make a decision. That's very, very difficult and hard for the buyer, especially when they're under stress and they're spending a lot of money. Like I said, buying a house is most likely one of the most expensive purchase anybody does as a person. So these are the home buyer skills that you might want to, buyer's checklist that you might want to utilize. Of course, this is listed on 85. And you might want to go through with this, your client. Remember, assessment sheet that I gave you, that could tell a lot of story. So buyers wants, what do they want on these style homes? Do they want 1-story, 2-story, multi-story, condominiums, high-rise luxury apartments, whatever it might be? Is it a want, have to have it, would like to have it, or not need it? Some things, no, I don't need that. So this might be good to kind of start eliminating how you search houses. The smaller, the tighter it is, it's easier to search as well. But sometimes the buyer needs to adapt to given on the situation and their money situation as well. What they want versus what they need could be different. Remember, we talk about the needs and wants. Actively listen to your client. Don't just listen, actively listen. I want to go through this a little bit because this is very, very important, and not just for the buyers, but as a real estate as well. And one thing that my grandma told me, and I still have issues sometimes, just like some of us, and I'm not doing enough listening. My grandmother used to tell me when she was alive all the time was, Mark, there's a reason why God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, not 2 mouths and 1 ear. So we need to listen, especially as a professional in real estate, we need to listen. Pay attention. One of the things that we're doing a lot worse than before is that we are so accustomed to having a smartphone right around us. We leave this on the table. And every time there's a buzzing or vibrates or whatever, we have a tendency to go look. When you are with your client, please put your smartphone away in your pocket, in your bag somewhere, so you are 100% concentrated to your client, so you could hear what they're saying, not just by word, but their body languages, gestures, facial features. So that is called active listening. Pay attention, 100% attention to your client. Withhold judgment. What does that mean? Is sometimes we make our own judgment before we even really get to know the person. We do that all the time, right? When you go to the department store and somebody comes up and asks you, may I help you? How long does it take for you to make a decision whether you want to work with that person or not? Statistics shows less than 10 seconds. We make a judgment on people, whether that's correct or not. So withhold judgment. And reflect what your client's saying in your mind. And make sure you're understanding what clients are saying. Clarify what was said. If you don't really understand, even though we have to be the advisor, if you don't understand, don't keep nodding and saying yes. Stop and ask question to clarify. Says, Mark, is this what I heard from you? Is this what you really mean? Or if you don't understand, ask them, says, I don't understand. Can you explain further? That's what you need to do. And check in periodically. Buyer changes their mind. So if you don't talk to them, at once, and maybe you don't start searching for in a week or two, check in with them. Sure, make sure their wants, needs are still the same. Even the price range could change. And when you are listening, do not interrupt. Let them finish talking. Then you state your opinion, ask questions, and so forth. And take notes if it's necessary. Any questions on this? This is called active listening, not just listening, active listening. Okay. Allison and Jane, page 90. Let's look at that a little bit. Sorry. When you look at 90, here go. This is what Allison and Jane is. Not agreeing on the much of the anything. So two person buying a house. One wants a suburb. One wants to walk to a dining and shopping. One wants yard. And one wants no maintenance. One wants no small yard, no maintenance. One wants a garden. One wants 3-bedroom, other says 2. How would you respond? What question would you ask? Think about that. It's very, very important after listening to them, the two parties or partners, whoever they're buying together, that they are on the same page of wants and needs, right? And I told you, easiest way to do this is a part of the homework that they have to do. Easiest way is get a 1 sheet of paper and draw a line in the middle and put needs and wants. And have them have a family meeting and make sure they agree on what needs and wants are until they agree. They're not going to be buying a house because they always get into argument. And I learned this in a hard lesson. In the beginning, when I started a career, I didn't do that. So one of my clients, every time we go see a house, they get into argument because they're not agreeing with each other on what the needs and wants are. This keeps happening over and over and over. Every single house that we got in is that. So I request them to do, you know what? Why don't you do a wants and needs and wants, and figure out and make sure you agree to it. Says, okay, Mark. They went home, they did the homework. And after that, and they show me the list. So that way I could always keep track. So my job, your wants and needs might change, but my job is to ask questions based on your wants and needs. That way we are staying on the right path. So they agree. After that, they didn't fight anymore. But when beginning to fight, I just said, wait a minute. You guys say you want a 3-bedroom, not 2 bedrooms, or whatever it might be. So that's why it's knowing, understanding needs and wants are very, very important. Any questions on that? Right? So property search considerations. You don't have MLS, but you still have websites, social media, right? Networking, phone, email, and mail. I'm not sure. Is it Cambodia? Is it common to receive like an email flyer from fellow agents if they're looking for it? Is that common in Cambodia? Somebody could help me?
No,
No?
not by email. Usually they go by social media. Or
Social
by,
media,
yeah, they go by Telegram. Most use Telegram here in Cambodia.
Telegram in Cambodia. Okay, that's
Yeah.
okay. But you have a way, depends on which country it is. You do different things to let other people know you have a property to sell. And sometimes on the open listing market like yours are, sometimes you try not to tell anybody, because the only way they're going to make money is you bring in a buyer.
Big company, they have websites. Other companies
Right.
on social media like Facebook and things like this to post their
Right.
leads.
Thank you. So whatever the method you use, make sure that that's where you're going to search. So what you want to do as a buyer agent is don't just when you get those social media posts or email or telegram, somebody advertising property, don't just discount it. Make sure you at least make a mental mind of what's on the market, because that's probably the only way and the best way for you in Cambodia to keep track, because you don't have MLS like centralized data system like in United States. But sometimes your friends from phone call. If you're looking for certain things and you have dealt with some other agent, give them a phone call, email. And understand what's around for new construction as well. Somebody had questions? Everybody okay?
Yeah. Mark, good morning. So I just would like you to be clear. MLS in America, because in Cambodia we don't have any MLS at all.
Right.
So just to be sure and clear that what the style and this system that they operate over there. Thank you.
Yeah. Like I said, MLS, you don't have it in Cambodia, so you don't have to worry about it in Cambodia. But United States, MLS, it's a centralized data system that agent uses. So almost all the properties that's on the market will be on the MLS. In our area of the market, for sale by owners, only about 2 to 3% at a given time. Rest of the property, residential, will be on the MLS because we all share our information. Everybody shares our information as a real estate licensee and agent and broker. So that you don't have that. So for us, we go to MLS.
I think
you can't have a pocket listing like in my area. In other words, you cannot keep your listing. If you're a member of MLS, you have to put it on the MLS. You just cannot keep it for yourself. So it's a little bit different. So it's a lot easier for us to search for property in the United States.
I think if you don't mind, I think first of all in America, I think it's a law. MLS is part like
MLS is not a law.
No, I know, but when you sell a property, it's getting recorded by in the government, right? In the laws. But here in Cambodia, they don't do this. They have record, yes, when they sell, because they have hard title, soft title at this condition. But when they sell the house, the people doesn't like to know how much they pay or they sell.
Right.
They get to be more private.
Let me clarify for you. There are certain states in United States called undisclosure state. Though they record, but those information are not a public record, so you cannot get it. So some states in the United States, you as an agent or consumer are not able to get sold information.
But agent or broker can have access, right?
Only to MLS.
That's
not to the public records. No, there are some states that you don't have access to public record.
Okay, because in Canada you have access. It's like
not all the places. Not all the places. It all depends on each state. It's not remember, in the United States or Canada, it's not a federal law. Yeah. It is each state sets their own rules of what is a public information and what is not. And like in our states nearby, like Idaho, whose state's right next to Washington, they are undisclosed state. your public, it's not a public record that anybody or nor agent could find out through the public records how much the house was sold. Agents are able to know because we have our own private MLS system, which requires you to put sold prices and so forth. But that is agents use only, but it is not a public record.
Mhm.
Okay. So sometimes new construction might not be, everything might not be on. You need to pay attention to that. Or distressed property means foreclosures. Maybe it's not that big in a lot of the countries, but sometimes in the United States, it's big right now. Foreclosures, property, distressed properties are probably less than 2% of the market in our area and entire United States right now. We lack inventory. After the 2007, 2008 recession, large recession that we had, we were up to closer to about 60% of the property was distressed property, meaning either foreclosed or going short sale. And advertise buyers' interest. You could advertise says, hey, my buyer is looking for, house around here in this price. If anybody has it, please let us know. You could do that. You could do outreach as a buyer's broker as well. And sometimes auctions or for sale by owner, or sometimes you drive in around, you find the house. So you have to use anything that you could to find the property for your client, whatever that applies to your country or even to your area. Because even within the Cambodia, some area might operate differently as well, right? So these are some of the hot sheets that they use. This is one of the midway real estate data. This kind of shows you what comes on the market. Hot sheet is usually, if you pick up area within your MLS, they'll give you a message or they give you a list of what came on the market that day. So one of the things that I do is I designate a certain area that I keep eye on. And every morning when I get up and I start work, I go to the MLS and go to the hot sheet and find out what new listing came on the market or what house went under contract and things like that. Searching for sale by owner opportunities. In a lot of the countries, it's almost the same because you don't have MLSs. But remember, you might have to, owners sending on their own, you as an agent might have to go contact them and get the information, potentially even work out to get paid commission on it. So that might be a little bit different. But there are opportunity fits boys for sale by owner. Owners are selling their own property. It happens in the United States as well. But it's very rare that owners selling their own property. Usually, we know that for sale by owner versus the houses that are sold by the real estate agent, listed by the real estate agent, is usually listed by real estate agent. Usually, the amount of the money they get and exposure they get and how much you sold it for is closer to 10% more than you do by for sale by owner. That means after you're paying all the potential fees or commission to the agent, you usually make more money by utilizing agent than try to sell yourself. There's a statistic that shows that in the United States. In the United States, and this is something that's available for you as well. RPR, Realtor Properties Resources. If you are a member of IRM, which is International Realtor Member, you have access to RPR. What is the RPR? Is RPR reports you can look almost 90+% of the property, residential and commercial informations are available for realtor only. Entire United States, commercial or residential. You could put it in an address, you could search for houses, whether it's on the market, what had sold or not. you're able to get information. And this is only available for Realtor members. And if you're not a Realtor member yet or IRMs, you may be missing something if you have clients that's buy and sell in the United States. It creates a wonderful report. But if you decide to keep the ABR and you pay your annual dues on ABR, and from there on, it's a first time ABR dues will include, application will include IRM member for 1 year. And after that, IRM membership will be a $75 a year. And that will help you to maintain the ABR or CIPS, so many different NAR designation that you might have. And that is a whole lot cheaper, guys. You guys are lucky, because I have to pay money to keep my CIPS, which is like $200, and ABR is another $150 and so forth. And I have about 12 designations. So I spend thousands and thousands of dollars keeping every year to maintain my membership and my designation. But for international realtor member, any NAR designation, you only have to be an international member, only pay $75 a year to maintain all the designation that you have. And RPR is one of the benefit, truly one of the best benefit. There are many people in a different country join and become an IRM just to get access to RPR because they have an investor that wants to buy in the United States or sell in the United States. So that's another benefit that you have with RPR. If you want to know more about RPR, for your association, CVEA, Yoshi Takita, who was on the call on last week, he is a global ambassador. You could reach out to him and he could do a demonstration for you. All right. And RVM, this is for United States, Realtor Valuation Mission. They will give you a automatic AVM, is automatic realtor, automated valuation for each of the property that's listed, and RPR has information on. But whenever you get information through it, you need to share information responsibly. If somebody tells you this is a confidential, don't tell anybody. And know who you are sharing information with. Don't just share it to anybody, especially some of the information. Sometimes, contact information and things like that you don't want to share with everybody. Be careful that you are not sharing confidential information with someone you do not know, has not been pre-approval, who may be trying to get info to seller. And know why you're sharing information and ask them why they need certain information as well. So showing properties. Let's talk about before, during, and after. Before we get there, any questions so far? Comments? Or anything you'd like to share? Everybody's okay? Okay. All right, we'll move forward. Before you're showing property, these are the things you have to do. Provide complete copy of a home buyer's checklist so everybody's on the same page. And you give them a list of the property that you're going to show. And I usually, if you're showing a multiple property, 3 or 4 properties, I put an appointment time. What time is the appointment for each house on the sheet before I give to them? And I let them know through email, say, these are the houses we're going to see. This is where we're going to meet. And these are the appointment time we have, and so forth. Usually, in my situation, people usually take about 15 to 20 minutes for each property. And before you even do that, make sure you had a buyer orientation. Remember, we talk about the buyer consult, right? If you have a buyer consult, you'll be very, very easy to go through these. And of course, you want to include, there's going to be rest stop or lunch times or something like that. So there's plenty of time you allow it. And hopefully, if it's possible, especially on the first showing, encourage children and leave pets at home. Because having a children or pet could be distracted. Sometimes pet is not allowed in the house because maybe the seller might have allergies to animals and so forth. But it's always, of course, you might have to come back and show it to the entire family, but it's always encourage children and pets to stay home or don't bring them. And review expectations for appropriate behavior. Stress punctuality, because we made an appointment that we want to make sure that they show up on time. And of course, you need to show up on time. My rule of thumb is that I always arrive 10 minutes before whatever the appointment time is, so I am ready to go when your client arrives. And be very, very cautious on per square foot or square meter pricing. Because it's very, sometimes what, they just square meter pricing is what? They just divide the cost of the house divided by square meter to have a per square meter pricing. And that does not put in count for what type of upgrades and so forth might have in the house. So it might sometimes could be danger. And set aside time after showing to discuss or make an offer. So when you're showing before, make sure you plan your date right. Any questions on showing properties before? Good. So in Cambodia, usually, if you're showing somebody else's property, maybe it might be rare. Do you have to have the listing agent there to open the door, or you go to the office and pick up the key? So how does it work in Cambodia? For my information, if you want to show a property.
You have both. You can have
both.
Yes, you can have both.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Because I always like to learn a little bit more about how the real estate is conducted in each country. In the United States, usually we have things called key lock boxes. That's on the house, and you access a application through your cell phone that helps you open the lockbox to get the key out for the house as well. When you do that, the automatically message goes to the listing agent so they know who opened the lock at what time. So that's the system that we do. And this is capable to do it because it's a lot easier because it's attached to the listing on the MLS. So it's very rare, unless it's a very, very expensive house, the listing agent's usually there or the seller's usually there. We go on there, even the house might be occupied, they usually house, no one's at home. In most of the real estate, especially on the residential in the United States.
I think Cambodia people now get more in technology, more and more, and they get advanced. Like now they have new technology for the opening door with distance, with the phone, with everything. So they get there already. It's already on the market here.
Good. And they have all kinds of lockbox key system, and for us in America, it's all attached to a MLS listing, and you'll be able to open it. So we get a message. I get a text message as soon as somebody opens the door on one of my listings. Then I get a message when they lock the door because you know the lock boxes.
Yeah.
And as soon as that's done, we have a system that automatically sends an email to a agent who's shown the house asking for feedback on how the showing went. So those are all automatic in the United States as well, in most of the area. So during the showing, arrive on time. Even the house might be vacant, ring the doorbell and announce that you're here. And most of the houses in Asia as well, you know, they ask you to take your shoes off. So make sure you wear shoes that's easy to take off, right?
Yeah, it's automatic.
And don't take anything or damage the property, of course. That sounds like common sense, but sometimes it's not. And I'll share with you a pathway to professionalism attachment a little bit later after the first break on what we look as a common issues, how we could respect when we do especially showing and so forth. Leave it as you found it and follow showing instruction. If there's an instruction, usually like United States, if the lights are left on, when we get there, you leave the lights on. If lights are not on, then you turn it on and you turn it off. And things like that as well. Focus on the home's potential. And this is usually very common in the United States. Maybe you could help me as well. You know what it is in Cambodia. So where do you think, for number one, where are the 3 places that women are always looking for and it's important to them? What do you think? What area of the house, three places in the United States? Kitchen? Okay.
Bathrooms.
2 more.
Bathrooms.
Okay, bathroom. What's third?
I think kitchen.
Yeah, we got kitchen, bathrooms, and one more
Bedroom.
in United States. What do you think?
And bedroom. Master bedroom.
More than a master bedroom, they look at closet.
Closet. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Sorry.
You know, it's a large closet for storage or whatever. That's how it is in United States. Okay, that's the top 3 places the woman looks. This is generalized, not necessary. Every woman cooks. Sometimes in the US, man cooks more than the woman, or maybe same in other countries. But usually woman cares about kitchen, the bathroom, usually the primary master bathroom and master bedroom closet. Those are the 3 things that's very important to women in the United States. How about men? 2 places is very important to men. Where do you think these 2 places are when they look?
Backyard.
Nope.
For barbecue. Party.
Yeah. 2 things. Not a backyard, close, but not backyard.
I think the basement, if there's a nice basement, they can do something, I don't know.
Yeah, but you know, some places in the United States don't have a basement. Like in Pacific Northwest, there's very rare that your house has a basement. But most important, one of the most important things for male, number 1 is garage.
Oh yeah, but they don't have here.
Whether there's a garage or not, or there's a space to, you know, do there's things that they want to do, you know, crafts work, woodwork, or whatever, fix cars. Garage is very important for the male. One more place is, it's a living room or family room where they could watch TV. You know, in US, they look at it and see, male, think about how big of the TV we could put it on in these rooms so we could watch our, you know, football, soccer, you know, whatever, baseball, whatever the sports usually.
Here
How
too,
big is the TV you can do?
Here too, for Cambodia too, it's important to have big TV, nice family room. But
Right.
the big issue is concerning cupboard.
Mhm.
All the house can be big, small, whatever you want.
Mhm.
They don't have a lot of storage. This is what they miss a lot.
Yeah, that is true. A lot of the Asia countries are like that. You know, of course, it's all different, right? And I don't know what is the, like, I mean, I could do the comparison.
But
so
they start to change. They start to change. So far,
it's changing.
I visited some
definitely.
houses. They start to change now on building.
So in United States, average house size, that's including condominiums, is right now right about 180 to 200 square meters is the average size in US for the house, excluding garage. But compared to that, Japan is usually between 70 to 90 square meters is the average size of the house. And I don't know what it is in Cambodia, but so there's a big difference. Of course, that's why US house seems like big, right? But
here they don't do garage. They don't have garage.
Yeah, they don't have a garage in a lot of places.
It's an open concept. And again, in the new development that I visit, I think it was Roy Williams so far, they start to put garage door. They start.
Or, they have a lot of times they have a carport. Japan, same thing. You have the carport, just a roof, and they might have a, gate, not even automatic gate, just a gate.
Yeah, it's open
somewhere you can park. Especially depends on what type of the weather it is. Hey, I think like in Japan, a lot of places like my snow, they might have a garage more than anywhere else because, car gets frozen if you leave it outside. So it's a whole lot of difference. I'm sure you don't experience that in Thailand, the car freezes. Some places, United States, you leave a car outside overnight. If you leave a water bottle inside the car, some places, even the water is frozen. Sometimes it's like minus 20, minus 30 degrees Celsius. Think about that. So, but anyway, those are the important things in the United States. So it's a little bit different, but size of the house could be very, very different. So in the United States, men's dream is usually to have a 3-car garage now, right? That way you could have a 2-car to put 2 cars in the house. Most of the places like we live, it's a 1 car per person that who drives because there's not a lot of public transportation that you could walk to. Of course, maybe people in the United States is spoiled a little bit compared to other countries. And a lot of us have like 3 cars. For my house, I have a 3 car and there's only 2 of us. And things like that, it's all different. So when you do continue on doing the showing, check surrounding, make sure, especially it's a vacant house, make sure there's not somebody crazy in there. And very simple, right? Don't smoke, eat, use the bathrooms, or sit on the furniture. Don't even sit on somebody else's couch. And use an informal name for homes to help buyer remember. When you see a 3-4 houses, buyer beginning to confuse themselves on the house that they saw. So you might say, sometimes we say, oh, yellow house, or, whatever it is, so that buyer could remember. That's during showing. Also, for safety reasons, at least in the United States, remember, real estate sometimes, it's a little bit different in different countries. Sometimes you're putting strangers into strangers' house. That's what we do every day. That sounds really crazy, right? So your safety is one of the number 1 concerns that you have to be worried about and you need to be concerned with. In the United States, we say it, make sure your car is not parked on the driveway so you don't get blocked in. Or when you're walking through the house, especially vacant house, make sure you're always closest to the door so you could escape if you need to, or run. So those are some of the very easy safety tips. After showing, review home buyers checklists, evaluate and compare properties. compare cost of ownership, because depends on which house you see, there might be different costs with electricity or even homeowners association fees, taxes, and so forth. And if the market depends on this, choose a second look properties as a preliminary to making an offer. If your market is not quickly like in my area, you might want to arrange second showing. So just go look at the house, because first time you might be able to look in 3-4 houses, right? And ask how each property meet their needs. What do you think of this one? So I usually, when I'm working with a buyer, I try to go on, except during COVID, now I try to drive them around to each houses so we could have a conversation about what we saw and what we are looking next in the car between appointments. So that way I can make a mental note on what they say. A question that I ask is, what did you like about the house we just saw? That's the number one question. What did you not like about the house that you saw? Then you compare that with the wants and needs list. They might say, oh, I didn't like how, that they didn't have a swimming pool. But I can remind them, says, well, I understand, but remember, swimming pool is not on your need list, it's on your wants list. So always good to check back. And it's better to do it after each property. That way they're not confused. After seeing 3 or 4, and if your clients are coming locally, I usually do not show more than 4 houses a day maximum. 3, it's possible, but 4 is the maximum. Because after I show more than 4 houses, buyer gets confused and they try to create their own dream house by putting different houses, things together and creating their own dream house. And when you're doing showing, be mindful of technology use. You want to ask a seller's permission before taking interior photos or videos. And never post photos, comments on social media, the house that you saw. Comments could get back to the seller. May harm the buyer's negotiating leverage. And those show strong reaction. There might be a surveillance camera, security camera. Right now, I always advise my buyer, because there's a lot of technology, security camera, you have the doorbell. In US, we have called Ring that could record audio, visual, and you could talk live with the clients through your cell phone, or security camera that records everything. So I tell my buyers, let's not discuss about our details about our offers or likes and don't likes in the house. We'll wait till we get to the car and talk about it, because seller could be listening or watching, or be able to watch a little bit and listen later. And each state have a law regarding use of any recording devices. Like state of Washington, it is legal to record video without consent, without getting permission. But it is illegal if you want to record audio, voice, you have to get consent from the person who you're recording from. That's the law. But of course, most people are not following that. But you at least let the buyer know and the seller know what the law is for each state or each country. And I don't know if there is such a law in Cambodia or not about use of the security camera and so forth. But that is a law in the United States. Each state has a different law. Some states allow to do both. Some states does not allow either, unless you get a permission. But videos, most of the states are considered legal to record without a permission. That's how you have a security camera that records, like in a stores and gas stations, or even homes. Any questions? All right. It's 9:55. So let's take our 10-minute break. Okay. And I'll give you another 2 minutes warning as well. So let's take our 10 minutes break and come back about 10:08, 10:06, sorry. All right. Let's take our first break.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Yeah,
We have
that's
these
fine.
people paid. Yeah. Anyhow, sometimes they come in, sometimes not. I don't know. Maybe they are busy. Sometimes not all people join.
Yeah, I'm going to leave that up to you because I don't control the attendance. Usually, unless you attend 4 sessions, they're not considered as completing the course.
Okay.
But I have no way of tracking that's your job as a host. So
Okay.
it's up to you how you do it.
Okay.
Yeah, and long as you pay the royalty fee, then that's okay. I guess,
Yeah.
you make the determination because we don't know. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, let's get back and started. What I did was on the chat room, I posted the pathway to professionalism and also a copy of our code of ethics there as well, that you could see all these as well. In standard practice 3-9 says, realtor shall not provide access to listed property or terms other than those established by the owner or the listing broker. So if you're working as a buyer broker, you must follow what the seller wants you to do, right? Cannot give up lockbox access or must supervise buyer inside the property, must show during appointment time, right? Must follow seller's requirement. Take your shoes off, have to wear a mask during COVID or whatever it might be. Even in the United States, once in a while, people still request us to wear masks because they're elderly people or in the house, or they're very, have a condition that is very to the COVID. In the United States, COVID still exists. People are still getting COVID as well. Like, I just heard on the news on Japan. Japan is recording almost over 1,000 to 1,500 people each month just getting dying from COVID right now still. Even though we don't report it, it's still there. So we're not whether just a COVID or not, we just have to make sure that we respect the sellers. So do it later exercise, right? What you want to do is to be good to all, provide equal services to everybody. How do you prepare a buyer? You want to set your procedures. What are your best tips to the buyers? What are the top 5 issues for each phase of showing process? Before showing, during showing, and after showing. With your experience, you want to create do's and don'ts for your client as well. So buyers are really aware and they are educated on how the showing process work. Anybody could share what are some of the things that's happening in Cambodia? Might not be good things for showing houses, or maybe it's unique to, I guess you don't know what the unique to Cambodia, but how are some problems that you might have during showings? Is usually seller home if you're showing a property that's owned by somebody occupied? The seller usually home when you show a house? How's that work in Cambodia?
I can share something.
Oh, sure. Please.
Yeah, through my experience nowadays, we are a little bit far different from United States, I think, because when we have a buyer and we can show them by online first. I mean, we send them by Telegram or something that the location that they need and the house that they need. So we show them first, and then when they are interesting, we have to have a dating with the landlord or the seller first, because we cannot I mean, we cannot access the buyer house without their without the seller at the location.
House. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the reason that a little bit far different from the United States.
Right.
Because yeah, sometimes we have some case that the seller are very busy, but they are very I mean they can give the key to the representative, or they give the key to agent because they know each other. Like for me, I have some seller gave the house key to me, and because the house sometimes they just buy and keep not living there, so we can go anytime to show the client.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Each country and each area is different as well. In United States, this is on the seller side. Because we have a lockbox system and MLS and very strict rules, we always ask if it's possible, and 99% of the time it's fine, the seller not to be home when the buyer comes to see the house. Because for buyer, right? Think about it, it's very, very difficult to open the closet, open the door, and things like that when the seller's home, right? Because buyers sometimes they want to open the kitchen cabinet, or open the closet, or a lot of things. But it's very hard when the sellers are home and watching you all the time. Unless the house is vacant, means nobody living there. But that's one thing in the United States we tell when I advise my seller is, make sure you are not home. That way the buyer could really take the ownership of the house and they could really look at what they want to look at. And a lot of times it's hard to sell a house that's in the United States because that's not normal. Hard to sell the house when the seller's sitting there in the living room and watching you, every you move, and they're always listening to your conversation. It's very, very hard. Right? But think about, in Cambodia, do this later. You want to figure out your steps and items that you're going to. The goal is, at the end of the day, as a buyer agent, whether you represent both sides or not, even for seller side, to figure out steps that you're going to do every single time, so you could only have to remember one way to do things, one way to give information. That's what I do. I only have a one way to talk to the buyers or the procedures, and one way with the seller as well, because I'm not smart enough to remember all these things. After 23 years, I dealt with many, many clients, and I can't remember what I did for one client. So I have a one way of doing things, so I know exactly what I did for them, especially when they give you a referral. Then I know what I did for this person. So I don't have to remember 5, 10, 20, 50 different ways how I treated those people. So this might be a good idea, right? Create your own showing protocol. So selecting home ethically and fair housing law. Now, this might not apply to Cambodia and many of the countries, but in the United States, basically, by federally protected class, meaning we are not able to discriminate based on race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, and national origin, etc., etc. In other words, we are not able to make a comment on items that might associate with this. Or as a seller, you cannot say, I don't want to sell to Japanese people, or I don't want to sell to Cambodians, so I don't want to sell to Black people, or white person, or whatever it might be, or I don't want to sell to a gay person. or whatever it might be, you cannot, or say, I could only want to sell to a family female. And you cannot discriminate based on anything. If they are able and willing to buy, financially stable, we are to be to do to sell it.
No.
Make sure you mute it. I see some of you are not muted. Okay. So that's one of the reasons.
Yeah. Hello, Jay. Yeah.
No.
Sorry, Mark, one of our participant testing
Sure.
its voice. Sorry.
Okay. All right. In the United States, you never discuss the topic about the neighborhood with your clients. Race, ethnic composition, religious makeup, educational levels, school ratings, crime situation statistics, age breakdown. I'm sorry, I'm going to stop right now till he can mute himself.
Yeah, he should
Van?
close his phone.
Van, please mute. Van Chatham, thank you. You could talk to somebody else, that's fine, but don't please keep yourself muted if you're not speaking. Thank you.
No, Matt, sorry, Matt, sorry. Because
Sure, no problem.
It a technical problem with the Zoom because I try to ask you some questions, so that I just talk to the CVEA staff to handle why I ask you and then he cannot hear in the Zoom. But now all done, okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
And I know that there's not a lot of discrimination, housing discrimination law in many of the countries, but it might be a good idea as you practice as a professional to maintain that you're not discriminating people who want to buy houses. It should be a buyer's decision, not your decision, and you should not be steering people to buy something or not to buy something because of these situations. But it might be custom-wise and law-wise might be different in each country as well. Even with the LGBTQ. And they are one of the groups. This is on extra. But as I remember, there's online simulation exercise called Fair Haven, which is available to you to understand more about fair housing. If you are IRM, you could use your number to visit fairhaven.realtor, and you could test your compliances with the housing principle. This might be a good exercise for you to do, just to understand how the fair housing law works in United States. These are, especially for me, for the foreign investors that I work with, I need to clearly explain this to them because like in Japanese or, some of my Taiwanese clients and so forth, they don't have a fair housing law like in the United States. So some of my Japanese investors says, Mark, to rent my property that we just bought, I don't want to rent it to these type of people. I don't want to rent it to them and so forth. But in the United States, I tell them, you cannot do that. Maybe in Japan, you can discriminate. Like in Japan, they might say, sometimes they say, I don't want to rent it to a single female. I don't want to rent it to a family. I don't want to rent it to older people or whatever. They might be able to do that in Japan by saying in the United States, you cannot do that. If they are able to pay the rent and shows that they have a good credit and no criminal histories, that you have to rent it to them. You cannot pick and choose on who they want to rent it to based on the protected class. You cannot discriminate. And we do hand out the buyer fair housing items as well. Agent that poses the risk, screening, steering, advertising, predatory lending. It might not be the lender, even advertising, you cannot say like in the United States, this home is only for family, no single person, please. Or even say, this is a great family home. You cannot use the word family in advertisement. So US is very, very strict on what you could use and not you could use on the advertisement before you get into trouble. And maximum penalty you could get on fair housing violation is a violation of discrimination in the United States. And that could be a federal felony offense. It could be a fine. You could lose your license, or you could even go to jail in the United States. So it's a very, very serious items in the United States. So these are some of the questions we cannot answer. All right, buyer agreement, royalty, and procuring costs. One of the things that you look at is when there's a written buyer agency agreement, which I shared with you last week. It keeps a buyer's royalty if you are not doing your job. Ensure you will get paid if you're not doing your job. This is will not. Ensure you are procuring costs. Procuring costs means that if you are the one cause that this buyer decided to buy a certain house, you might have a claim on the commission in the United States. So you might be working with them and showing houses, and they like this houses. You're working with them, get all the information, but all suddenly this buyer goes to somebody else to write offer. You as a person might have if you have an agreement, you might have a cost to receive all or some of the commission, and it's called procuring costs. Basic concept of procuring costs: whose actions cause the buyer to make the purchase? Not all the work that I did for the client, not always the one who showed first, not always the one who wrote the offer, not always the one who has a buyer rep agreement. But that's called procuring costs, but always having buyer agency agreement could help avoid the situation. Basically, how was the first intro to the property made, as one of the things. I'm going to skip this a little bit. In other words, it should be a continuing activity with that buyer, especially when it's in the house, that they're the cost to buy. Let's look at Kim and the Jared situation. You did the seller counseling on this property. You know the seller's motivated bottom line and the personal information. This might be a good one to consider as a dual agent. You represent buyer and the seller. Akim and Jerk saw the properties at an open house with another agent. They think they told the open house agent they were working with you. What are the issues on this one? Open house typically do not make an agent procuring costs. You cannot disclose anything you learn about the seller at that time of this seller counseling. You as an agent. You can write the contract and negotiate for the buyer. But remember, confidentiality is there. You cannot reveal something that was told you in confidence from the seller. You cannot tell that to your buyer. Or vice versa, you cannot tell what buyer told you about the offer or anything to the seller. Keep good records on this, since the open house agent may come after you for procuring costs. How about Rana and Lindsay? They visit a for sale by owner and love it. Concerned about some deferred maintenance on the house. And they need to ground floor addition. That makes an agreement. They make agreements for you to call the for sale by owner. Is that okay? Yeah. If you have a buyer agency agreement, this could be home inspection. Does zoning allow the room addition? So you might not want to give the advice. Compensation with the seller. Have you negotiated to get them pay for it? You don't want to do free work. How you approach the seller. Need research what it was listed for. Have to do some research to make sure the price that for sale by owner has is a good market price. Sometimes for sale by owner property is sometimes way, way more expensive than what it needs to be. So you have a buyer agent that you need to give them advice. Turn knowledge into action. Parul and her parents are looking at lofts. She starts taking pictures, sending them to the friends, and tweeting her excitement. Sales agent sees her excitement and adds to it. Parul's father asks questions about heating and cooling costs, taxes, and etc. Her mother asks if it is a safe neighborhood, and would you live here as a single woman? She asks those questions. What do you need to do? How would you respond to her mother? What's the definition of safer neighborhood? I don't know. Depends on who the buyer is. What they consider as a safe, we don't know. That's why we don't answer. What about the photos and the tweeting? Unless you have a seller's permission, you should not be tweeting, sending photos into social media. Parul is weakening her negotiation power with her actions. What would you advise her? This will be my advice. Number one, on the photos, you need a permission. And I say, yes, your mother and father could ask questions, but since you are going to be buying, Parul, please have them ask the question through you. And I want to answer the question that is most important to you since you're buying the property. Sometimes parents, relatives, friends could get in the way of making decisions. Right now, I have a buyer that I'm working with, and we're finished negotiating and we're going through the closing process. Fortunately, unfortunately, she has a son that is going to law school and trying to become a lawyer. So she's asking all these legal questions, which does not apply for our state law in Washington because he's in Minnesota. So and she's asking all these questions, and I said to her, please have your son study what the law of Washington is before asking questions, because all the questions and concerns that he has have to do with the law in Minnesota. And the law in Minnesota here are different on a lot of things. So I asked her for that. And remember, you could take whatever the advice you want from your son. At the end of the day, remember, it's a trust relationship that you and I have. If you're not able to trust me on the things that I say or tell you, then maybe we should work together. Because if I cannot trust you and you cannot trust me, I don't think it's a good relationship. I have to have that talk this afternoon. Because if you don't have a trust with each other, it gets more and more difficult as we move forward and forward and forward. Because she always going to question me on my action and so forth. So this is the end of module 3. The key points is managing buyer's expectation is a critical steps in buyer representation, right? You need to know the buyer's expectation, and your goal is to meet that expectation. In order for you to meet the expectation, you need to understand what the expectation is. If you don't understand the expectation, most likely they are going to be disappointed with your service. The protocol to showing properties addresses issue before, during, and after showing is very, very critical. Even though that might be the easiest part of our job as a buyer agent, but it is very, very critical to do it the right way so that you can move forward with a good knowledge and good understanding. Realtor must familiarize themselves with local, state, and federal fair housing law for United States and whatever the law is on discrimination in Thailand. In Thailand, is there any law that's related to housing discrimination that you know of? Anybody?
In Thailand?
Sorry about the Cambodia, my fault.
It must be. I'm sure he must be, because the law here they follow by Europe, like France and things like this. So they must be.
Yeah. But the question is, are you familiar with it? That's the key point, right? There might be a law, but you might want to know what the law is. So you're doing the right things for whatever the, whatever the country, whatever the region you might be working on. Because in the United States, each country, each state, there's a federal law and state law and even local law regarding who are the protected classes on the housing discrimination. It's all different.
Yeah.
So I have to know all the law.
For where I'm from, Canada and France, there is. So
right.
And I know here good lawyers too, and I know there is for sure, for sure, 100%.
Yeah. Then maybe it is always good to know for you as a practitioner of real estate what are the discrimination law is. Right?
I can say, Mark, Cambodia land law not allowed to sell the property to the foreigner, but that's not.
This is not discrimination.
That's discrimination. Yeah. So in Cambodia, I don't think we have discrimination.
This is not discrimination, sir. This is to protect because it's a poor country.
Yeah, I mean, not able to sell to foreigners. There are many countries does that as well.
We have only proka. Proka is.
Yes, exactly. This is to protect for people.
We don't have.
In Cambodia, don't have discrimination
law.
Yeah.
Over under that.
Not yet, right? Not yet. Maybe in the future we will.
Because we didn't have pandemic.
But we'll see. A lot of the countries don't have a lot of discrimination law because, remember, United States was created, it's an immigrant country. Almost everybody's an immigrant in different color, different race. But, a lot of times, a lot of our countries in Asia, even though we're all Asians, but we all have our own culture and we've been very, very homogeneous, means one dominant. Of course, even within a Cambodia or Japan or even other countries, there might be other tribes or area that might be a little bit different. Majority of the people in Cambodia are Cambodia-born person.
I think that because Cambodia don't have like racism. we don't have problem according to the racism. So that's why
No,
this
right.
law don't have.
And
Not
Mark,
yet.
I tell you something, I travel a lot around the world. And I think the best people in the world is Cambodian people for the welcome and everything. They're not racist at all.
Good. Not good to hear.
Yes. So
And
you're more than
some
welcome.
know me, and I know a lot of people.
You're more than welcome in Cambodia.
Yes. Thank you. Hopefully we're able to visit soon. I'll be able to visit soon.
You should. It's a very good country.
Okay. But it could be different in the rest of the world. So they might have that question. But right now, once you get a lot of the foreign people coming into your country, it might shift, not just the foreign people, but different ethnicity people. And there are a lot of discrimination that happens in a lot of the Asian country. You know, not buying the property itself, you know, of course, that they to protect the land, you know, there are a lot of country has a law on, you know, what foreigner could own and not own, but not just that, but culturally differences, religion, and so forth. You know, a lot of times those things happens, right? But you just have to be aware of it, that these things will happen. As a developing country, might not have it. As a developed country has a lot of these issues. When you have a lot starting to accept a lot of immigrants, you have that. The United States is a country of immigrants. The four areas that poses the danger of discrimination are screening, steering, advertising, and predatory lending. You know, which I think we didn't go over to all these details because I know that with my study that there's not a discrimination or fair housing law in Cambodia. Any questions on module 3? Everybody's good?
Yeah, good.
Okay, let's start on module 4. Offers and negotiations. Learning objective here is to educate your client about the offer process. You need and you analyze and determine your client's negotiation positions. Assist your clients in formulating an informed and competitive offer based on the objective valuation tools. Guide your clients through the process of the presenting offer and negotiating with the seller to get the best outcome possible for the buyer. When you have a different listing agents and buyer agent, it's a whole lot easier because you're doing the best you can to represent one party. When you have a dual agency, when you represent the seller and a buyer on the same transaction, it becomes harder to balance it, right? Of course, the goal is to, you can still do, I'm not saying it's a bad, but it's harder to try to come to a term without jeopardizing somebody's will. So it's very hard balance. That's why I said, I have not figured really out how to do that really well and jeopardizing each other. So I don't do a dual agency. In the United States, you're able to do that a lot easier. And I usually, because it's a list, it's a exclusive listing country. So if my buyer wants to buy the house that I have listed, my usual initial royalties goes to the seller. So if this buyer wants to write an offer to my listing, what I usually do is I refer this buyer to one of my team members or somebody in my office, and they could write an offer for this house. And what I do is I collect a referral fee for referring this buyer. If this buyer decided not to buy this house after something and wants to go look at other houses, I get this client's back. So usually on referral fee on this type of situation, I charge 50% referral fee to somebody in the office because it's my buyer. They already know the property they want. All they're doing is writing the offer and represent them through the closing process. So that's how I usually do. I don't do dual agency as I mentioned it in the past. Preparing the buyer. How does buyer work? process work. Educate the buyer. Negotiation process, which forms and documents that you have to do. Helps buyer manage emotion and make better decision. Our job is not to get emotional with the buyer, but our job is to stay professional and guide you through the buyer through it, so they are less stressed about buying a property. And these are just kind of steps, right? You show the buyer, financing, you have to determine, finding the right broker, finding the right property, you make an offer, you negotiate, then you close safely, then you get the key. Negotiation, of course, and come to agreement.
So, Mark, may I clarify a bit about negotiation process?
Hmm?
Actually, in Cambodia, first of, the first process, we do not allow the buyer to connect directly with the seller.
Same thing in the United States.
Yeah, because sometimes they want to play around. They want to play with us. That's why when we can be the representative. So we can talk first, and when the price closer, it's going to be. It's going to be a great soon. That's why when most, everything almost closed, then we can let them meet. So is it the same there in USA?
Well, United States depends on where you are. In my state, a lot of times buyer and seller never meet. They don't even meet because everything is done through a real estate agent like us. All the negotiation, all the contact, and usually when when we go visit the house is empty, meaning the seller is not there. So you don't meet unless they really have to meet for whatever reason. Even closing, you don't meet. We go sign separately. So it's very rare the seller and a buyer meet. And we try not to make them meet with each other because I don't want their emotion to get involved and say things to each other that might break the deal. And I always tell my buyer, says, you know what? You're buying a house. You're not buying a family with them. So you don't really need to know them about them. It's a business decision. And, I'm saying ultimately, this is what I always tell my buyer. Buyer, you need to figure out what is the maximum amount you're willing to pay for this house. That's all that matters. Whether that is the listed price the seller wants or not. That's what the buyer needs to figure out. What is the maximum amount they're willing to pay for you? Because buyer could pay whatever they want, right? If buyer want to pay 2 times more than listed price, they can do that. Because they really want the house or whatever it might be. Because I don't know. Each house is different. Not just that each buyer is different. Each house is different. Because buyer might feel very, very strong about one house and not for the other. So I have that conversation all the time with the buyer. Don't worry about the seller. Don't worry about the seller, what they could do. That's my job to worry about it and advise you. But what you need to worry about is what is the maximum amount that you're willing to pay for this particular house. Some houses you don't want to pay more than listed price or even below list price. Some houses, I just want this house. I want to pay $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 more. It depends on what it is, or 10% more, whatever it is, right? But you have to have a strategy. Remember, we talked about the buyer's market and the seller's market. It's a whole lot of different strategy. If it's a buyer's market, meaning there's more houses out there and the seller's having a hard time selling a house, yeah, you might have a more negotiation opportunities. But if it's a seller's market and you don't have that much time or the negotiation, you need to put a best offer first and be done, because you might not be able to go back and forth by that time. But while you're doing that, you could negotiate with multiple people until you reach mutual acceptance in the United States. So you have to create negotiating strategies. Biggest strategies, is it a buyer's market or seller's market? And you need to provide overview of the offer and negotiation process, how it works. Offer on 2 properties at the same time, not allowing in most of the states, unless you're willing to buy 2 property at the same time. That might be different. We are not, so I don't write offer on two different property for one buyer that's only looking for one house. Only pick one. If that doesn't work, then we move to the next one. That's how it works. Again, managing expectation. Prepare clients for reasonable expectation again. What can they do? Remember, you cannot control the seller, but you as a buyer and buyer broker, you could control what you do. Let's concentrate on that. A lot of times buyer wants to speculate what the seller is going to do. We can't control that, right? You can only control what you do as a buyer. So that's where you need to let the buyer understand that. Yeah, we could run different scenarios, but you need to concentrate on what you're willing to do, what you could do to make a best offer possible for a given situation. In the United States, most of the states, especially on the resale houses, we make an offer on the purchase and sales agreement already, and both parties signs, that becomes a contract. That might be different in some of the other countries. In some areas, you make an offer first and you agree on it. You might not sign the final purchase and sales agreement till when you close the property, which is like that in Japan and Mongolia as well. You make an offer, you agree on an offer, and continue to negotiate till the closing. In the United States, almost all the negotiations are done up front. You become then you make an offer on the contract itself. If both parties sign, and that becomes effective and binding contract. Verbal does not work. It has to be written. Of course, can be revoked or walk or withdrawn upon the time there are signatures and delivery. Up to the time, once it's binding contract, then you only have a legal way to get out of the contract, however that might be. Whatever that looks like, depends on what you agreed on. One of the things that we have to look at is market value. Winning offer starts with the detailed market analysis. You could use RPR in the United States. What it is you want to make sure to advise the buyer saying, buyer, yeah, this house is more expensive than other houses that's around in the neighborhood. But I think here's the reason why. All the properties in the same, condominium sold for $200,000, and this is listed at $300,000, and I think it's too expensive. But at the end, buyer, it's up to you how much you're willing to pay for the house as well. And of course, in the United States, you're getting a loan, so bank decides whether the house is worth what they're loaning money on. So there's an appraisal process in the United States where the bank sends out the appraiser to make sure to do an evaluation, due diligence, to make sure the house or the loan that you're giving to the buyer is worth what they're paying for. So market information you update. Market information is needed to figure out what kind of strategy you're going to do. Supply and demand, absorption rate, average market time, and things like that. We studied that a little bit in the past. So formulating an offer. So what we want to do is, before we go into formulating an offer, why don't we take our last break? Okay, I think it's 10:50 right now. So why don't we take a 10-minute break and we come back at 11 o'clock?
Mark, I have a question.
Sure.
Like in Seattle, in Washington State, like example, example, I schedule an exam and then pass the exam, and we get the license from the state already. Everything is.
You're breaking up a little bit, but remember, in order for you to get licensed,
example, I do not every 2 years. It's okay. Like we don't want to practice.
Up to 2 years, but in order for you to get a license, you have to have a residency here, and you have to belong to a real estate company in order for you to practice real estate. You could put a freeze your license for 2 years, but you cannot practice real estate during that time.
Like example, I don't want to practice. I don't practice it yet, but I got the license, and then in next 2 years I will renew it again. Yeah.
It might not be renewal. Just depends on the situation. Each state is different. The rule is different on each state. So I do not suggest you to get a license in advance until you decide that you're going to move to certain state. Then you could find out that you have to, because if you have a license in multiple states, you have to belong to an office in each state. If you have a license in Washington State, you have to have the office in Washington State. You have to belong to one of the broker's office. And if you also have a license in California, you have to belong to a broker in California as well. So you have to have it in each state. So my rule is, it's not a one license for entire country. It's different each state. So I do not suggest you get a license in advance. I suggest you to get a license once you're here, and depends on where you're going to live. Because you have to have a residency here in order to get license. Foreigners are not able to get a license and not have an address in United States.
Like example now I live somewhere in Boston, Massachusetts, but okay, like sometimes we just arrive, and then okay, we have time to schedule an exam, we get the license, but we don't have more time to practice yet. We just get it, and we don't want practice, but okay, within 2 years, and then okay, if
I don't know whether I don't know what it is in the other states. Washington State is 2 years. You have to activate your license within 2 years.
I see.
Yeah, and it's different in each state. So you need to find out different state. Yeah.
I got it.
Okay. All right, let's continue and finish off for the day. All right, formulating an offer. This part is same. Once you have an update and discuss current market condition, it's time to move forward and make an offer. Remind your clients that the offer represents a legal contract. It could be a legal contract, because if you sign, that means it's a legal contract. Assess clients' advantage and disadvantage, right? We talk about the market condition, the property, finances. Always in the United States, cash offer is better than borrowing the money. Because if you do a cash offer, you don't have to have appraisal or bank go out and evaluate the property. And seller factors as well. What kind of situation seller is in? All these come into formulating an offer. That's why it's always good to have a real estate agent help you, such as you're as a buyer agent who could fully help the buyer. Because if you're representing both sides, you might have information that you're not supposed to reveal. And you cannot do that. You cannot tell that to buyer or the seller. So that could be very, very difficult situation for you. Then you have to have a game plan. Is the market with your against you or against you? Seller's market, buyer's market, right? Are there competition offers? Is there more offers than one? Are the parties motivated? Is the seller's motivated? Or you're the buyer's motivated by buy? So, Mark, if I get it for this price, I'm okay. Well, I really want this house. You need to understand that. Does the listing agent have their own offer? Check and see. Listing agent might have their own offer yet. That could be a disadvantage, right? What is your relationship with the other agent? When I work with the agent that I know well and we're good with, everything goes smoother because we understand each other and we understand how we operate. And we try to work together to make the deal happen. See, these are the checklist evaluate method. It's on the page 115. This is a checklist that we talk about that you could use for the buyer, for the property, and talk about buyer's financing. The seller question, meaning the buyer, sellers, if we know about the seller's information. Right now, good and bad is, I have one buyer that I'm working with, and they decide to make an offer to the house, but seller's in financial trouble. So they have to do a bankruptcy very soon, or the house is going to be taken away. So they have a very limited time to be able to sell the house. So we were able to get a very good deal because seller then wanted to go to the bankruptcy and they have to get rid of the house because that ruins their credit and history. So we're able to get a good price on it. Understanding those is very, very important. Buyer seller's market, we talked about, right? Market status offers, client's negotiating position, affect, initial offer, counter offers, contingency, know and use strategy for all market types. Buyer market, you have a little bit more negotiation and you might have a time. Seller's market, you don't have a time and you don't have a lot of negotiation. Seller's market is usually that let's put the best offer we can from the beginning and see if we get it or not. If we don't, we move on. Because you might not have a time to go back and forth. Buyer's market, you might offer a little bit lower, but in the United States, very easy because MLS has the statistics. 3 months ago, some people are saying US real estate market going down. In my market, list price versus what they closed for went down far as 98.2%, which is less than 2%, right around 2% of the actual listed price was the sold price. And right now we are back to 100 as of yesterday. Average is people are paying 100% of what the seller is asking for on all the sold houses. So market, those things make a lot of difference. Buyer's market, strategy for a buyer's market, right? Keep up to date on the price adjustments because they might have a price reduction all the time. So you need to keep eye on it. And you might want to ask the seller, listing agent, they might tell you, they might not. And check and see how long they've been on the market. Ask seller to help with the closing cost. Shorten the time for a seller's acceptance. Say, seller, I want your answer within next day. If it's a seller's market, you have to be ready with everything. Offer list price or more potentially. In a very hot market about a year and a half ago, in my market, it was average that people are paying about 110% of list price. So a house is listed at $800,000. People are paying $880,000 to buy the property. That was average. Talked about it, make the first offer the best, right? Contingency. Remember, in the US, you make agreement first, then you put a contingency, meaning that you have these things must be met in order for us to fulfill the contract that we agreed on, including inspection, approval of financing. And there are other contingency you could put it on. More contingency you put on, of course, more places for the buyer to be able to get out. But on the seller's market, it makes your offer very weak. More contingency you have, weaker the offer is. Only in a neutral and buyer's market, permitting buyer to move in quickly, helping with the financing seller concessions, right? Renting to be buyer with option to buy, paying some of the buyer's closing costs. They might do more repairs or give a credit to repairs if it's a buyer's market. Doesn't work on the seller's market. Einstein said you have to learn the rules of that game, and then you have to play better than anyone else. That means that you have to win. You have to play better than anyone else. That is our goal, and that is our job. How does offer presented in Cambodia? In US now, most of the market, the listing agent or seller, we don't present, so the buyer does not present offer directly to the seller. We usually send it via email to the listing agent, and the listing agent presents. How does that work in Cambodia? Does agent submit an offer to buyer? I mean, if there is a buyer agent, you submit to the seller, or buyer's there when you submit an offer to the seller? How does it work in Cambodia usually?
Yeah, the same.
Same?
Yeah,
agent to agent.
Yeah, sometimes directly to the seller as via the agent. Sometimes we have the two parts, agent, buyer, and seller. So we share, we communicate the information from buyer agent to seller agent. But sometimes it's directly. It's not. This is only one agent that very representative to the both sides.
Right. In my 23-year career in real estate in Washington State, only one time I did as a buyer agent presented our offer to the listing agent and a seller in person. Only one time. So it's not really common, at least in my area. Usually I present it, right now with email now. Email to the, I'm representing a buyer only, then I'm presenting to the listing agent. Then listing agent, buyer agent, I, myself, and listing agent might have some conversation to explain the offer. Then the listing agent present to the seller, and they'll get back to us through the agents. Almost everything is done through agent, not directly involved. So I'm skipping some of these submitting the offer. And you can have somebody to be on the backup offer, but backup offer is also a binding contract with the caveat saying, if the buyer number one does not fulfill their contract and back out, buyer two, you are automatically become a buyer. So if somebody really liked the house, but they really want it, they might want to be in a backup position, so they could be automatically, instead of going back on the market, automatically becomes a backup offer. And usually backup offer, you can always back out before you become an actual buyer. So it might be a good idea, but some seller doesn't want backup, but you always ask. Some seller will like it, because it puts the pressure on the first buyer to perform, because if they keep negotiating, seller could say, no more negotiation, the backup buyer could come in. So that puts a pressure. As a listing agent, I always welcome backup offer if the seller and I think that's a good offer to be in the backup. And of course, you're going to help, depending on what the contract requires. Buyers could lose property or forfeit their earnest money if they misrequire class. Example, don't tender earnest money on time, doesn't do mortgage application on time, or respond on time. It's all based on the contract. The buyer can lose their earnest money. But in the United States, at least in my case, I think there was only 1 or 2 times where a buyer lost the earnest money. The reason because they lost the earnest money is because buyer decided that, you know what, Mark, I just don't want to buy this house anymore. Most of the time you have a legal reason, meaning a contingency that let you get out and get your earnest money back. And earnest money in the United States is usually right around 1% or more right now of the purchase price. Usually, by its own negotiation. Buyer must be told the confidentiality agreement. The possibility that seller or seller's representative may not treat the existence terms or condition of the offer as confidential unless confidentiality is required by law, regulation, or buyer, or by any confidential agreement here between the parties. What does that mean? Is that in state of Washington, you make an offer as a buyer agent, that offer might not be confidential. If the seller says, you know what, Mark, listing agent, you could tell to the other buyers, potential buyer, what the offer that they receive. If the seller gives a permission, without buyer's permission, who wrote an offer, seller can reveal the terms of the offer to others to try to solicit the best offer they can. So buyer needs to know that. And each state is different on these laws as well. Buyer agreement must inform the buyers. Sometimes listing agent can disclose only with the seller's permission. It is on the exclusive agency listing, seller could disclose themselves if it is. If needed, have selling side confidentiality agreement prior to offer. Now the buyer could include in an offer that please keep my offer and terms confidential. If you want to do that, you could put that agreement in there so the seller is not able to disclose the offer. But usually I have never signed confidentiality agreement, the buyer to sign and seller to sign. Only a lot of commercial property and things like that, after contract, a lot of terms and negotiation things. Multiple offers, right? When there's a multiple offer, seller decide whether to disclose, number one. Discuss all time of listing, decide at time of multiple offer, then get sellers directions in writing, disclose who it asks, listing agent in their firm, co-op, and so forth. But it gets multiple offer, it could be very, very hard. Seller's option, accept the one, counter to one, send back for highest and the best to reconsider, cannot counter to more than one. Check state law. In state of Washington, you can counter to more than one. But it depends on which state it is in US, the laws are different. But usually what's happening is if there's a multiple offer, and to say to all the buyers, says, buyer, we'll give you till 9 p.m. tonight to come back with the best and the highest offer that you have. so that we could re-evaluate and reconsider all the offers. That usually happens, best and highest. Buyer option, discuss, withdraw their offer. They could, staying until price reaches their maximum or whatever it might be. What our buyer's option is when they made an offer. Go big or go home, because it's true. What do you have to lose? The sellers are not required to ask buyers for highest and the best. They're not. They can accept one. You may never get another shot at it, potentially. What's the worst that's going to happen? Seller says no, especially on the seller's market right now. There's no reason to go big and the best you can, because you don't want to lose house because what others did. You might lose a house because of the $5,000 you are trying to save and so forth. You know, what's $5,000 to save on $1 million property or $500,000 property? Think about it. Is it worth fighting for? Maybe for some people, most people, it's not. To increase the yacht, not all suggestions will work for every buyer or the seller. We speculate. Our job is to have enough answers in one quiver and know which one to use and when to use them. Right? We have to have all the weapons that we need to help the buyer to help them to use. Which weapons do we use? Each war or battle is different. What can buyers do? No mortgage contingency, more earnest money, pay for some of seller's items, if it's possible, right? You could do that. There's a lot of things that you could do potentially to have your offer accepted, especially on the seller's market. What can buyer or we do? Remove contingency. What does seller need? Ask the seller, what kind of offer you want to need? Is a closing day important? What's important to the seller? And also be careful or comments when reviewing offers, right? Because security camera, and that might become a disadvantage to you when they're reviewing offers. Says, hey, they said this, and I have a recording said they did this during the showing. I don't want to deal with them. Buyer love letters in the United States, in not just the offer, they sometimes write a letter, we call love letters, with the offer to make their offer looks better. They talk about their families, and they talk about their financing, where they work, why they love about the house, and so forth. We, as an NAR, we do not recommend writing them. But if you're going to write them, write about why you like the property. Don't write about yourself and so forth, because it could become the fair housing violation if you start talking about your family, familial status, age, etc., religion, and all those things as well. What can we do as a buyer broker? Talk to the listing agent, see what we can find, build a rapport. What does the seller want? We could ask that question as a buyer's agent. Turn everything in with contract, evidence of fund, everything. So that way, less that they have to ask for later. Share authorized buyer's information. Buyer says, please, Mark, you please tell this to the seller because we really want this house, and this one you could tell. Then you can do that. Prepare a lender. Talk to your lender, say, this is what we're trying to do. Is this good or not? So that way, the lending part, if you have a mortgage, goes very quickly, or the funds availability. Even the buyer says, I'm paying cash. Is the cash available right away to close right away? Or do you need to get money from somewhere? Those things you need to know. You want to be ready and to go, especially on the seller's market as a buyer broker. Escalation clause. In the United States, you could use escalation clause, meaning that I am willing to go up, whatever, $5,000 more than the competing offer, and maximum I'm willing to pay is $600,000. In other words, let's say property is listed at $500,000. I'm willing to go $5,000 more than the next highest offer, but maximum I'm willing to go $600,000. Escalation clause. A lot of us don't like using escalation clause because when you get multiple escalation clause, you have to do a lot of math and try to figure out which is the best offer. Most offer that I received on the one property at one time was 35 offers. Most offer that within our MLS in Seattle area receives 120 offers on one property at one time. That's a lot of offer to go through, right? To figure out which is the best offer, because not just the price, because other terms might be different, right? Cash offer might be a little bit lower than the one with the loan, but cash offer might be more smooth, so you might take the cash offer. Appraisal gap coverage. This doesn't really apply to Cambodia as much because most of your as a cash offer. But if the bank determines the property's worth listed at $500,000 and you're paying $600,000 for it, and the appraisal comes in, bank says, you know what, property is not worth $600,000, it's only worth $550,000. You can have appraisal clause says if the appraisal comes in lower, I am going to bring in more cash to cover the difference. Counter offers. During the counter offer stage in the most of the state, that they are able to, seller is able to review or accept any other offer during counter offer stage. Just because we begin to negotiate one party in the United States, most of the places that you could accept other offer or you could negotiate with a multiple person until we reach mutual acceptance on one of the offer, then you're under contract, you're binding contract, that you have to fulfill the contract. Prolonged increment negotiation is risky. Seller may take another offer. Most of during the seller's market, you don't have a chance to do a counter offer because it's a multiple offer situation. Rohan and Lindsay want to use a love letter, want to pay $5,000 over highest offer. There are other offers. How you advise them? Think about that. Love letters. If you're going to write a love letter like about the property, I don't know whether paying $5,000 over the highest offer might not be good enough, right? Could be $10,000. Especially when there are other offers. Offers on REO. REO is real estate owned. It means a foreclosed property. And we're not going to go through a lot of the details on this. It's usually a foreclosed property as is condition. Usually they don't want to do any repairs. And you're usually dealing with a bank, not with the seller. Seller is a bank. And they're very mechanical. There's no emotional side to attach to it, like buying, working with a seller and a buyer. Short sell is a very unique situation where the seller wants to sell the property, but they owe more money than what the house is worth for. This happened on a very down market, and bank is willing to take might not cover to pay off their loan, but they're willing to go forward with it because they don't want to do foreclosure and go through the process. In the United States, they say if the bank forecloses a property and to put it back on the market, usually costs minimum about $25,000 in legal fees and everything else. So bank might say, you know what, rather than go through the legal process that take maybe 6 months to a year, I'll take the little bit less money if we could pay off, say, you owe $400,000. I'm willing to take $350,000 and call it good. That's called short sell. And also RENE, which is a real estate negotiation expert. This is offered by Reby, which is a different, and there's other designation that's there. But this one, I don't know whether it really works well for Cambodia market. It works well for US markets. I don't recommend that this be the next thing that your association does, but you might want to consider that as well. Practitioner perspective from our side. Educate buyers, most important. Top 3 things that affect negotiating. Prepare a buyer for multiple offers. Escalation clause, remember Einstein. Learn the rules, then play the better than anybody else. And this is module 4. Preparing the buyer to make the best offer you can on given market is very important. And our job is to explain how it works, options and what they have. Realtors should analyze and interpret the data and what have you have and strategize with it. And realtors should assess clients' advantage and prior to deploying an offer. There are many offer scenarios. Multiple offers, escalation clause, variable rate closure, REO, and et cetera, you need to understand that all that happens. So with that said, we covered the chapter 4. Any questions on what we learned or anything about real estate in US or whatever the question you have before we finish for the day? We have about 30 minutes or so. We don't have to stay all along, but if you don't have any questions, comments, any question that you want to ask about anything that I might be able to answer, I don't have all the answer.
I have 2 questions, Mark.
Sure. Okay.
I am contingency. Is it mean to the condition that we have to discuss and it will be by in the contract, right? Contingency.
Right. So basically, after mutual acceptance, contingencies, you have to fulfill these items for contract to be valid and to close. Yes.
So yeah. So it is a step like negotiating, like repair or something like that.
Right.
So yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Inspection items. You could put it in. You could negotiate on inspection. But you don't negotiate after agree on it, but you can only negotiate on items that we agreed on in the contingencies.
I see. And can you explain a little bit deeply, like as is condition?
As is condition means the seller is not willing to do anything to the house. So they don't want to negotiate on any repairs.
But the seller, the seller here, it means the original owners, the original owner, or the bank, or the financial institution.
No, it could be anything. It could be a bank, or it could be just any owner could say as is. So good example when we do as is. If the bank owns it, usually it's as is, usually. But let's say these situations, I have a situation where, let's say, my clients, good clients, their mother passed away. And the daughter never lived in the house, and they have no idea how the house is. So those are the times that the daughter says, I have no idea, Mark, and we don't have money to repair anything, so let's sell it as is. Because no one's been living there, it's hard to know what's going on the house, right? They don't even know what kind of repairs that was made. So that's the time that you do. But usually when it's as is, usually the price is lower than the market price. Because buyer knows because buyer is going to accept the house, even though buyer could still do inspection, but most likely seller is not willing to fix anything. So that's what's
But
as
if
it is.
yeah, if the seller if the selling process is in as is, so the buyer still or the agent still recommend the buyer to do the house inspection or not?
Yes,
Because,
always.
yeah,
Because
okay,
100%,
yes.
I always recommend my buyer to do their inspection. And you know, as is condition, you put an inspection contingency there. If they find something big, and if there's an inspection contingency, they could get out. The seller, you're not fixing anything but the repair items that came up on the inspection, way too big, cost too much, so I'm going to get out. You'll be able to get out.
I see.
Or sometimes seller might say, wait a minute. I'm not going to repair, but I could lower the price by this much if you still want to buy. But buyer, I always, 100% of the time in United States, recommend the buyer to do inspection. Sometimes buyers say, I don't want to do inspection. That's buyer's choice. But always, even for new construction, I recommend buyer to do inspection. Sometimes builders are human too, right? They might miss something. Never know. There have been cases that, you know, like a water pipe is not really connected right, even on new construction. So never know. So for me, I recommend buyers doing inspection. And usually in the United States, the usual home is cost about between $500 to $600 to do an inspection. Seems like a lot of money, but usually repairs that when something goes wrong in the future, if you didn't do an inspection, it's going to cost you a lot more than $500, $600. It's always good to know what's wrong with the house before you go into the house.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you so much, man.
Any other question?
Diligence and inspection, the same meaning or what?
What's it? What an inspection?
Inspection and diligence.
Due diligence?
Due diligence.
Yeah, due diligence might include inspection is part of the due diligence, but it could be due diligence, could be other things to find out whether the buyer really wants this house, because they might do a due diligence to see if this is a neighborhood that they want to live in. They might check out the school information and things like that. Yeah, diligence is when the buyers are given a chance to evaluate and make sure this is a property that they want to buy. The inspection definitely is part of the due diligence. But due diligence is this very generic word in the housing that could not just mean inspection, but could be other things. Inspection is usually a home inspection, physical inspection of the property.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question? Everybody's good?
Excuse me, Mark. So as you mentioned earlier, like usually the counter offer the seller can do only one time, right?
Not depends on the state law. You could do you could go back and forth to reach agreement. But in Washington State, let's say I have a 3 offer, I could counter offer to all 3 of them. Then comes back and I could choose again. That's why it gets very, very hard and confusing. Because you usually counter offer when you don't like the terms. You go back up again, you have to do the same thing over again. That's why usually nowadays what listing agent does is please submit best and highest. We don't want to go back and forth. Too much work. My brain hurts, right? Think about it. When you have a 35 offer, just reviewing offer is hard. But usually when you have a 35 offer, there's going to be 1 or 2 offer that's really outstanding.
Yeah, qualify
but it's hard.
To a few.
Yeah, but it's hard. Because a lot of offers are very close, you know. And a seller doesn't know how to evaluate. I have to help them. So I create a chart and put all the information for 35 offer. It's a lot of work. You know, I don't get paid 35 times. I only get paid once. So that's why we as agent, truthfully speaking, we like best and highest.
What is the?
So,
Can you explain a little bit about the best and highest condition? The high and best condition.
Yeah.
In the outstanding one or the,
yeah. You ask the buyer to submit their best offer and the highest price they're willing to pay. We only going to review one time. No counter offers.
I see.
Yeah. That's why, remember, in the beginning, I told you about, don't worry about the seller, what seller is going to do. Yeah. Only thing that you really have to do at the end is how much money is buyer willing to pay for this house, right? Money is including, you know, as is conditions or repairs, they're all included. And each house is different. Even though buyer says, I have a $1 million, some houses, buyer only willing to pay 500,000. That's that. Some houses, they're willing to pay 600,000. I don't know. We don't know, right? So buyer needs to make a decision because we need to have a buyer happy, and we don't want buyer blaming us. Says, you know, Van, you told me to pay 600,000. You don't want that to happen. Then buyer's not going to like you. Always let the buyer make the decision. Our job is to make suggestions and give advices that you should never make a decision based on behalf of buyer. Let the buyer make the decision, especially in the United States, because we like to sue each other. A lot of lawsuits. You don't want that. You could get sued for anything in the United States. Right? United States, McDonald's serve hot coffee, right? They should serve hot coffee. It's hot, right? Somebody spilled their coffee. They sue McDonald's for serving coffee, hot coffee. They got over $3 million. That's crazy. Because if I want hot coffee, I want hot coffee. I don't want warm coffee. I want hot coffee, right? So crazy place in the United States is. That's why we have all these rules.
I have two questions, Mark.
Sure.
I just want to make sure in USA, in case the seller not give us commission fully, for instance, Cambodia actually minimize, we have at least 3%. In case the seller, I mean the owner, not give us full commission. So in USA, compromise or file to the court.
So right now, there's a way. If you have a buyer agency agreement, you already have agreement say that somebody's going to pay me 3%, right? Let's say 3%. I'm just using percentage, okay? 3%. And let's say, and buyer signs the buyer's agreement, and seller's only willing to pay 2%. That means the buyer have to pay the 1% to you.
But in Cambodia, sometimes they said, oh, because we lost or we whatever. I mean, compromise or we go to the
It's up to you. In United States, all the commissions are negotiable. It's all negotiable. There's no one sets the commission.
Not binding, so we have to
not the government, not the lenders, not your designated broker. No one could set a commission. That's against the law. It's always negotiable.
For commission for renting, for instance, we find a house or condo for the client, and actually Cambodia we got commission from the owner. So how about USA?
Same thing. No different. But commission.
I mean, like Singapore or Japan, maybe they can share 50-50 from the owner and the tenant. or maintenance?
US is different. Commissions paid differently. Some places, the commission for the agents bringing in, sometimes they get 2-3 months of the rent as a commission, like New York, like where Yoshi is. That's usually the case. You get a 2 or 3 month commission, rent as a commission. But in the state of Washington, I don't get involved in the renting because our commission in Washington is different. You only get $200-300. So I don't do rentals. We have a property management company that's their own rentals and they manage their own rents. I don't do any rental. So I give to if I have a client who wants to rent, I give to the property management company. They handle it. Then I get $100 gift card. That's all. I don't, and usually the commission in Washington, you cannot live by just facilitating a rental unless you do all the property management and other things. But it's all different in each state how you get paid.
Yeah, here also sell the property like land or the house. We will get the commission from the owner. But this is
usually in United States,
not stated in the law or broker.
If it's in the law, that's the way it is, and that's you need to follow. Like in Japan, the government sets the commission, how much percentage, maximum percentage you could receive from who. Government sets that. So it's all different in each country. But in United States, commissions are negotiable, 100% negotiable. I could set my own commission, said I need to minimally receive this much to help. On the buyer agents agreement, it states how much minimum money that I have to receive in order to help them. Depends on who pays, minimum amount. So right now for me, minimum amount that I need to receive to help anybody is $5,000. Somebody's going to have to pay. And because I have that buyer agency agreement that I signed, several of my buyers every year pay me $5,000 because they find the property not on the MLS. Wholesale by owner, and the wholesale by owner is not willing to pay, then buyer have to pay. But buyer understands that before they even go look at these houses, because we have a buyer agent, I have a buyer agent agreement that's signed and explained. That's why the buyer agency agreement is important, in my opinion. So it guarantees that I'm going to get paid if I sell something. Minimum amount. And $5,000 is not a really high amount because your average price of the houses right now is about $500,000 in our area. And it's usually right now, we're looking at maybe commission that's between 2.5% to 3%. So it's a lot more. So almost a half of I get paid if it's on MLS and people are paying. But usually that I work with some of the buyers that works with me all the time. So, some of my buyers, they're investor and they buy 3, 4, 5 houses every year. So I'm okay.
Mark.
Yeah.
Hello, Mark. Can I have,
Sure.
On this point, I would like to clarify about the buyer contract. Yeah, you mentioned that we don't focus on the seller, we will focus on the buyer. And just want to check with you, the buyer contract, when we do it before closing or after closing?
The contract?
Yeah, buyer contract.
Buyer and the buyer agency agreement. I sign buyer agency agreement before I start working with the buyer.
I see. Yeah.
From the beginning.
So
even
maybe,
before I have the buyer agency agreement signed before I show one house. It's my rule. I don't show anybody a house unless I have a buyer agency agreement signed.
Okay, I see. Yeah,
So it's taken care of up front. Take care up front. But buyer and the seller contract, remember, the offer becomes a contract. Maybe in Cambodia, you do offer first and you agree and you work through it. You might sign the final contract at closing. That's happening in many of the countries. You continue to negotiate price and everything till closing. But in the United States, you agree on everything. But we have the contingencies, but it's a little different. Your contract is there. When there's a contract there, means that you are obligated to the seller is obligated to sell to the buyer as long as we meet all the contingencies and so forth.
So in all the transaction, it will start from the buyer contract first, and then you start to looking for the property.
That is correct.
Yeah, I think it's totally different from Cambodia. Yeah, that we are here, we do the
I understand.
Yeah. So in this point, can you share the buyer contract, the template?
I did that last time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I did share in the chat room last time.
Yeah, just to check with you, normally the buyer process or buyer normally the sale process, we have the customer, we have prospector.
And remember, on the buyer agent agreement, it is not a requirement by law, but only about 12 states requires that you have to have a buyer agency agreement signed before you could start working with a buyer. And Washington State, my states, it becomes a mandatory and becomes a law starting 2024. So you have to have buyer agency agreement signed. But how much you're going to get paid on the commission, that's always negotiable. But you have to have a buyer contract, buyer and buyer agent contract to be able to work with them. So that's changing.
So just to confirm with you that normally the sale process, we have prospector process, right? And then the prospector will convert to lead, and then we follow up, negotiation process, something like that, and then close the deal, right? But at USA, when we sign the buyer contract in the prospector process or lead process,
I'm not quite understanding your question, but when the buyer agent agreement only guarantees that you're going to get paid, and buyer agrees that you're going to get paid on X amount of money. That could be offered by the seller, or it could be offered by the combination, or the buyer pays for it. That's something that you're going to have the agreement with. So in other words, that agreement has to be in place in about, like I said, 14 states in the United States now.
So is there any fixed amount of the buyer have to pay?
Might have to, maybe. We don't know.
Oh, I see.
Because if the seller, remember, seller offers a commission that's I agreed on to work as a buyer agent, then buyer doesn't have to pay.
I see. So in case the buyer not agree with the agreement, you will.
I don't work with them.
I see.
I don't work with I do not work with a buyer that does not sign buyer agency agreement. Period.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I told you, I think I only had 3 people that say I don't want to sign buyer agency agreement in 23 years. And I worked over 1,000 buyers. Only 3 people in 23 years.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, thank you, man.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I have a question.
And if you don't want to stay here, you could go if you like, or you could listen to the question and answer as well. If you like to go, then please go, enjoy your lunch, and see you tomorrow morning. But if you have a question, stay and I'll answer the questions.
I have a question, ma'am.
Sure, go ahead.
Regarding the buyer agency agreement, as you explained, it's a mandatory and depend on state policy as well.
That is correct.
Is that like an exclusive one? Like can one buyers make like different, few different?
Yeah, there is an exclusive one and open agency agreement as well. Yes.
So who will find the good condition houses for the buyer? They will go first.
Yeah, for me, I don't accept open buyer agency agreement.
Yeah, and one more thing, like as you mentioned, the commission is negotiated for, like it's not a fake.
So is there any case like the agent is willing to reduce amount of the commission in order to make the case close?
Yeah, they could do that.
Oh, so is there any?
But remember,
that?
when you start, but one thing that you have to remember is that once you start lowering the commission, it's never coming back up. Because we're in the referral business, right? Because Dewey, I lower the commission for you, and Dewey says Marco's a great agent, and Dewey tells Gilbert, Marco's great, and he even reduced the commission. So Gilbert's going to expect the same thing or lower. So once you start lowering the commission, it's never coming back up, guys. So you be careful. There are a lot of business, even in the United States, they lower commission to get business, but it's never coming back up. And right now, when it's a seller's market, you know, there's a lot of listing agents says, I'll reduce the commission because house sells quicker, so I don't have to spend money or time that much. When the market slows down, you know, they're going to go out of business because house doesn't sell, right? So I personally have my own set amount. I could make what commission that I need to make. That's my own business. So that's all. I already told you now as a buyer agent, since it's a buyer agency class, minimum that I need to receive is $5,000. I don't care who pays minimum, right? But usually, like I said, usually 2.5% on purchase price. And our average house price here is over $500,000 to $600,000. So I usually, buyer never pays. Only cases that, you know, like a for sale by owner, the buyer finds or we find, and seller says, no, I don't want to pay. But then the buyer needs to know the buyer's going to have to pay me $5,000 to me, you know, or for me to work. If they don't want to pay me $5,000, I'm not working with them because I'm not doing a free business. So.
Okay, thank you.
But, you know, I'm not asking 10,000, 20,000. I think I'm asking very reasonable amount. Okay. Anybody else? All right. Everybody's good?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much and sticking around, and thank you for all the questions. We'll have some more question and answer time tomorrow.